Night Live. You get a good look up there in Milwaukee, American Family Field, getting ready for Game 2 of the wild card between the D-backs and the Brew Crew. Arizona winning it last night. They take a 1-0 advantage in the best of 3. And with that, we say hello. Inside Studio E, a.k.a. the Electric Factory. Gary Striewski is here. We got Clinton Yates out in Los Angeles. I'm Sam Ravech. We'll hear from Terrika Foster-Brasby in just a bit, guys. Look at Clinton. Look at Clinton.
What up?
This is the best time of year, guys. And obviously, October kind of creeps up on you. But it's here now. We've already got the wild card series underway. Before we get to the highlights, we got plenty of them. I want to get your thoughts on one or two storylines that you guys are keeping an eye on as we enter the postseason here. Clinton, start with you.
As the president of Base Running Twitter, I'm always trying to figure out who's going to be the most aggressive on the base pass during the playoffs, and particularly this season when we saw so many things change in terms of throwovers, base size. We saw a lot more aggressiveness. We've seen a lot more mistakes already in terms of guys getting thrown out on bags that they probably shouldn't have, and coaches being a little bit more reticent because they know it's a little easier to get from station to station. I always love watching what goes on the dirt, and that's no different this postseason.
Mr. 4070, I think, is going to break the all-time postseason stolen bag record, which I think sits at 7 or 8. He might do that in the first series.
Yeah.
That was the angle I was going to go with, the eventual NL MVP, just the goings-on of Ronald Acuña Jr., but I'll pop it to the AL. And really, I just want to see if the Orioles are the real deal for the duration of these playoffs. The quickest 100-loss to 100-win turnaround in modern baseball history, and they did it the right way, not a flash in the pan. They have real talent that's real good, that's real hot at the right time, and I want to see if they're going to be the real deal through October.
Fair enough. Let's keep it in the AL. We got highlights to get to as well. Earlier today, Game 2 between the Rangers and the Rays at the Trop. Not too many people in attendance, though. Rangers took Game 1 4-0, thanks in large part to 4 errors by the Rays. Getting it started early, Adolis Garcia at the plate. He homers his 40th of this 2023 season. Few batters later, 1 on 2 outs. Josh Young lifts one to right field. Josh Lowe.
No!
What? Almost able to make the catch. No dice, though.
Turn away!
No dice.
No snag, no grab, no stab.
Tried to get him at third. Ball dropped by Paredes there. Rangers extended 2-0. Keep an eye on this guy. Evan Carter crushes one out to right. The man is 21 years old, Clinton.
He's 21 years old. I believe I heard from Coley that he wanted to be a dentist when he grows up. That's unbelievable to me. So, yeah, in general, that series has just gone. The way that it went was, I mean, you've got to be disappointed if you're a Rays fan. You're coming out, you're throwing the ball around Game 1. You don't look particularly sharp defensively. And I just felt like if you look at those two franchises in terms of what Bochy has done coming in, they just seemed like, even though their regular season ended a little bit poorly, they just seemed like a looser team in terms of how they let their pitchers move, everything they were doing. Look, I understand that the Rays started off their season super hot and then had one of the more awkward changes for a roster that we've seen in a long time in Major League Baseball, but that was a terrible performance at home. There's no other way to put that in terms of what they did.
Right now, Gary, the Rangers get the distinct pleasure of taking on the Baltimore Orioles, one of the teams you were just talking about. And how does that kind of DS match up? Because that'll be really intriguing.
I would have loved to see this be the American League Championship Series matchup, to be quite honest with you. The Orioles, they are so young. They are very powerful. And then this is a Texas Rangers team who, quite frankly, should have won the division.
No doubt.
They were one of the best teams across Major League Baseball. They had the most all-stars. And listen, they won this series against the Rays effectively how they won most of their games in this regular season, which was they literally slugged the... It's the internet.
Yep.
I was about to.
He was close. He was this close.
I was about to say the whole word. They slugged the 4-letter word out of the ball today, and that's their path to winning. They got to hit homers.
Yeah.
They got to leg out doubles. They hit a triple today, and that's going to be their recipe for success with those 5 All-Stars. And then a 21-year-old cat coming out of nowhere,
literally
amplifying some of that offense,
making the most out of his September call-up.
Yeah.
Clinton, your thoughts on that matchup coming up next week?
I love the O's. I mean, the Orioles are a team, obviously, that I grew up in D.C., so they were close to me in the sense that I went to that ballpark a lot. I am one of very, very few humans that has seen playoff baseball in Camden Yards at this stage of my age. And so they've got so much going on there. The sprinkler, I don't know if we can say this is the internet. They got the dong bong, which is great. Everything that they do is a fun thing. And let me tell you something about this. When we talk about the right way, there's two different things that we're discussing there. Number one, drafting well and developing your players. But over the past 10 or 15 years, we've seen from so many different franchises service time manipulation that has not helped them out. They not just pick their players, they not just develop their players with the Oriole way, one of the old school franchises that has one of the best systems you've got. They actually play them and put them in the bigs. This is how you get it done. You're not just sitting around waiting for guys to vest so that you don't end up on a different deal. I love the fact that they simply put these dudes on the field, even if they all look exactly the same and nobody can tell them apart.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll have more on the Orioles later on in the show.
Hey, you talk about Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson, because I got to make sure I'm seeing the names on the back of those jerseys, too, when I'm doing highlights.
One AL wildcard series to another up there in Mini. And here we go, bottom of the fourth. Carlos Correa singles to score Royce Lewis, who's had a great wild card series. Still bottom of the fourth, bases loaded. Willie Castro crushes one on the left side. Max Kepler comes in to score. Twins extend their lead 2-0. On to the top of the fifth here. Jay's looking to get on the board, and this cannot happen, Clinton. Cannot happen.
10 out of 10, that can't happen. As my old baseball coach used to say, decent effort on the dive there, but where are you going? There were people in front of you. What is that? That cannot happen. As far as I'm concerned, the series is pretty much over at this point.
Listen, it's a cardinal sin to make upset the king of the base paths as it relates to Clinton Yates. Listen, if you get him going the wrong direction, I'm talking about Clinton Yates, man, your day's over with. So Vladdy Wagon, stay off the internet, man. You are now the subject of Clinton Yates' ire, and that's not a place you want to be.
By the way, in the last game, Bo Bichette got thrown out on a play that was halfway in between. Correa made a good play again, but as well, this is what I'm talking about. The gambles you take on the base pass end up being the difference in games, and the Jays are paying the price.
So let's talk about the Twins a little bit more here, because they are leading 2-0 still in the top of the sixth. This was a team that had a lot of question marks as far as health coming into the postseason here. You had guys like Correa, who was out, Royce Lewis, who we saw hit 2 home runs in his first 2 playoff at-bats yesterday, and Brock Stewart, who's been just excellent out of the bullpen for this team as well. I think even we are seeing at 80%, Carlos Correa is better than somebody else at 100%. He just hit his 60th RBI in the postseason earlier in this game today as well. This is one of those teams you don't really want to pick against, but you don't have a ton of confidence in either, Clinton.
Well, I mean, picking against them has been pretty easy for, I don't know, the last 18 whatever games that they played. And so there's this relatively surprising, and I'm going to say something that might be a little bit controversial, but I'm happy for Carlos Correa. I understand he was a part of those Astros teams that everybody cannot stand. But he's also a guy that went to Minnesota, was roundly ridiculed as that was just a stopover as part of a larger deal in order to try to get more money. He didn't really care about that market, didn't really care about that team. He's a guy that's had issues with his back and all sorts of things for a long time. To see him out on the field, he got an RBI single earlier today, contributing. I'm sorry, that's a good story as far as what a comeback can be for a guy that was once so maligned overall.
It's his time. Point to the watch. This is a special man in October. Almost turns into a different kind of player as well. All right. Speaking of the watch, it's time to move on to the National League here. D-backs playing the Brew Crew. What an exciting game this was last night. Pick it up. Bottom of the second. And Tyrone Taylor absolutely crushes one out to left. He only had 10 home runs on the season. And this guy's been special, Gary, all year long, Corbin Carroll.
Dude, the freaking rookie, the all-star, and they're basically the Orioles in the National League. 100 losses 2-3 seasons ago. And all of a sudden, Mike Hayes and Troy Lavello have those guys playing well. And again, it's a lot of young guys answering the call when their number is being called up in the Diamondbacks. A surprising story. I don't see them doing too much.
You don't?
Doing too much here as it relates to the National League landscape here. And by the way, when you started the show and you called it whatever the park is there in Milwaukee,
American Family First.
Dude, it'll always be Miller Park.
It's Miller Field.
It'll always be Miller.
Fair enough. So on to this D-backs team, who has had a dismal bullpen the entire season, show up huge in game one, and they get the win. But both teams dipped really heavily into their bullpens. You saw 14 pitchers used in that game yesterday, Clinton. How do both of these teams go forward now with some bullpen questions?
You know, this was a worst-case scenario, I think, for both of these teams, in fact, although the Diamondbacks are the ones that came out with the win. By the by, we are not going to get out of this without talking about old man Longo dominating on the infield. That double play was one thing. There was another play where, again, he got a runner too far off the bag on a play that should have gone the first, but he bobbled and he ended up picking the guy off. So Evan Longoria, by the way, bringing that veteran presence is huge. But I think that for both of these teams, this wasn't what you wanted in Game 1 because normally the Brewers get a little lead, squeeze the air out of the ball, go to their elite bullpen. Couldn't get that done and still didn't get the win. My man Devin got roughed up, couldn't find the zone. Corbin Carroll, who we got showing right now. By the way, Gary, do you know he went to a high school in Seattle that had a 100% 4-year college graduation rate for their graduates?
Oh, boy.
That guy is the only guy that didn't do it because, hello, he went to play professional baseball. That's a completely separate story, but I think the Brewers are in a tough spot here if they've got to go back again to their bullpen because this is not a team that scores a ton of runs. The Diamondbacks, in my opinion, don't necessarily know any better. A young player like that is the best player on their team. I think Arizona's going to win it again.
Chance for rebuttal.
I was just going to say nerd alert, but then again, I'm like, hey, that's why those guys are better than me in every facet, of professional life, really.
Well, I don't know how many of those guys in that high school were offered as much money as Corbin Carroll was to leave early, right?
Also that too, like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bypass all of that stuff.
It was Red October back in Philadelphia last night.
Dude, what an electric scene out there.
Absolutely electric. Pick it up in the top of the third here. Top of the seventh. Phil's up 3-0. And, Jazz Chisholm not too happy about that strike call from Zach Wheeler. He let the umpire know it. Jazz missed some time this year with an injury, but with him in this lineup, it's a different lineup. Brian De La Cruz, what a stop by Bohm there at third. Great stretch. Safe is the call. End of the day for Wheeler, went 6 2/3. He was great. Philly crowd getting involved here. Jose Alvarado. Yes, sir. Sit him down. 3-1, bottom of the eighth. Nick Castellanos, polarizing figure in baseball, but a lot of fun. And look at Harper. Stop sign is up.
Good luck.
Get off the tracks when the train's coming through. Harper says, I'm going to score anyways. The Phillies go on to win Game 1 4-1. That is now 6 straight wins in playoff openers for the Phillies. And look, we all remember the run they went on last year. They were 2 games away from winning the World Series. They were really hot down the stretch last season. They may be even better in the second half this season. Clinton, I'll start with you here. What kind of is the ceiling for this Phillies team, and how do they just keep doing it in the postseason?
They've been a vibe ever since last year. I believe that was last year when Bryce hit that walk-off homer and sprinted around the bags to the point that the whole place was going crazy. That kind of ran into everything they've been doing. And remember, in that series, they got kind of outclassed. They got no hit at home in a combined no-hitter by the Astros. We remember because we were there, as they used to say. But I feel that this team has learned a lot from last season to this season. Sometimes that can be a little chip on the shoulder. Somebody makes a run and you say, oh, they were a flash in the pan. Not so fast, not remotely. Castellanos, I mean, that guy, he is one of the most exciting players in baseball for a ton of different reasons. I want to give a shout out to Kelsey McKinney of Defector, by the way, who did a deep dive on the button-down situation for all of the Phillies. Yeah, exactly, Gary. Gary got the eyebrows popping because he knows what I'm talking about.
That guy refuses to wear buttons, dude. It's awesome.
Castellanos is the ringleader of that squad, and I know that Bryce Harper is sort of the vocal leader, but there's a reason he ran through that stop sign. If you watch that game earlier, Dusty, their third base coach, held up Kyle Schwarber for reasons I will never understand. At that moment, I guarantee you, Bryce looked at him and said, I ain't stopping for nothing, and kept it going. Ring fingers. There they are.
What's this for?
This was awesome.
It was great. It was great.
Asked postgame, he was like, I don't know. I just won a World Series. I have to believe that there is something behind the gesture that was displayed yesterday, more than just, hey, we want World Series rings. They're shutting the door with Aaron Nola in Game 2. And the thing that Clinton mentioned, that I know it's not between the lines baseball, but the city of Philadelphia
it's amazing.
And Citizens Bank Park being a vibe, and not a place that the Dodgers or the Braves want to go into. No. The scenics at that ballpark are insane. And you got A.J. Brown, you got members of the Phillies.
Yeah.
You got all of these people, these stars in Philadelphia in their own right, being like, man, I wish I could play in an atmosphere like that. And this is a wild card series. So the Phillies make another run, and there's really nothing that tells me that would indicate that they can't, that they shouldn't, that they won't. It's going to be good viewing.
It sure
Have you guys been to that ballpark?
It's nuts.
It's crazy.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It is truly something that, for like just a sort of garden variety place, they really turn into something. There's a casino next door. Everybody's going nuts. That place really is a home field advantage as far as the NL is
I'm
concerned.
gonna tell you right now, that's a ballpark that if I was an opposing fan, I wouldn't wear.
No, no.
I'm not wearing opposing fan gear. You're not catching me in any turquoise Marlins stuff.
No, you got
even close.
you got a plain T-shirt on there,
Yeah.
and it's the connection with the players in that city that is pretty much unmatched. The Braves also have a connection with their city, and they have for the last couple of years. They have been, quite frankly, the best team in baseball over the last couple of years. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these teams that won their division series, starting with the Atlanta Braves. We could sit here and list off stats all day long with this team. A .501 slugging percentage was the highest out of any team in the regular season. They hit over 300 home runs. They averaged over 6 runs a game. But if you could boil it down for us, Clinton, what's impressed you most about this Atlanta Braves team?
That's hard to pick.
That statistic right there that says first inning homers is part of a larger statistic, which is first inning runs, which is what I look to a lot when it comes to some of these good teams. If you've got a staff like they do that can get up on guys, if you've got a staff like they do and your lineup can get up on people early, bro, the psychological advantage to that is impossible to quantify because you just feel like you can't beat them. Not only are they really good, they're hard to beat because of how they play. Those are not necessarily the same thing. Check to see a lot of different squads that have had talent but haven't been able to put it together. They're due, again, base running is critical. My man, Uncle Ron Washington, he's always got the windmill going at third. EY over at first. Make sure their stolen base situation is always together. They're not necessarily the best stolen base team outside of 1 or 2 guys, but they run the bags well. The Braves are really, really hard to beat. And that is a different thing, again, than having super talent. They've got both, and that's really difficult to do.
Not just that, but they hop out on teams early and quite often. But it's all about closing the door. They have one of the best run diffs in baseball. So generally, when they get a lead, they don't relinquish that lead, and they oftentimes make it a whole heck of a lot easier, more oftentimes than not, for their starting pitcher to get more innings, and that way takes a little bit of stress off that bullpen. Therein lies an easy formula for wins.
Right, easy formula. I hesitate to take it here, though, guys, but it's been an interesting last 2 postseasons, right? 2021, no Acuña, they go on to win the whole thing, right? Last year, they were set up pretty similarly to this year. If the Braves don't win, if they don't close it out, is this season considered a failure?
Definitely.
I think it has to be. I mean, that year that Acuña was out and they won it, they also entered the playoffs with the least wins of any team in the tournament. So that was impressive on a different level. If you go from that to last year, and last year would have stung a little less if the Phillies had gone on to win the World Series, but they didn't. You could have written it off on the buzzsaw factor, but that's not what happened. This has to happen this year. I don't know that not winning it is as big of an issue, but if you can't even get to the World Series, well, something's really gone wrong there in terms of when your fire decided to go out on your season, and that would be unfortunate.
The core group of these Braves, they're signed for a long time. Everybody's happy. Everybody's healthy. But it is kind of weird that we look back on that World Series win from the Braves, and it's, oh, wait a minute, they won that without Ronald Acuña Jr. because he had the ACL tear, and he missed the entirety of whatever it was, the second half of the season, the entirety of that postseason, and they still got it done without him. They need to get it done with the best player in baseball with him. Otherwise, it's just this weird, as an aside to a conversation, that this team can very easily, the way they're put together, tuck that whole side story to bed.
Should the Braves maybe make a call to the Boston Bruins to maybe get some notes? Hey, we had a great regular season. How do we finish it out in the postseason?
Fortunately for them, they're likely not going to be playing any teams from South Florida, who were the bane of Boston's existence in the entirety of the playoffs, whether it was the Heat, whether it was the Panthers, and the list goes on.
Right. The synergy onto the ice there. Well done.
Hey,
opening night Tuesday.
Yes, it certainly is. Okay, so a lot of folks expected Atlanta to be where they are. I don't know that many folks expected the Baltimore Orioles to be where they are. They were 25-1 odds, according to Caesars Sportsbook, to win their division. And what do? They go out and win it for the first time since 2014. You know, Clinton, this is such a young, fun team to watch. And we've talked about it. They lost over 110 games 2 years ago. How are they in this position?
One of the people that I think is most important in all of this is not just their manager, who's probably going to win Manager of the Year, but a guy that I remember covering in college. I saw him play in Omaha in the College World Series, and he was the kind of kid that as soon as you saw him, you said, that guy's the leader. It's the catcher, Adley Rutschman. Again, you might have seen what he did in the home run derby in terms of this year, hitting a bunch from the left, turning it around and banging a bunch more. That's a party trick. But when you've got a young catcher that can manage a staff and be the leader of the team in the way that he is behind the dish, I think that is a recipe for success. When the best player on your team is your catcher, you're a daggone good team, and that's who the Orioles are right now.
The entire offense, or rather the entire defense, goes through Adley Rutschman, and we mentioned it, on the front end of this. They're so young. They don't have the expectations of knowing better, right? The last time the Orioles won a World Series was in 1983, and they've gone through a lot of regime change. They've gone through a whole bunch of skips, and they've gone through a whole bunch of marquee players and gigantic contracts that amounted to nothing. These are guys still on their rookie deals. These are guys still on that cheap money deal. Adley Rutschman is 24. Gunnar Henderson is 22. So this is one of those perfect storms that these franchises sometimes get, where they can call guys up early. They can play their first-round picks that generally, have to incubate in the minor leagues for a half a dozen years before they get called up. These guys are contributing right away immediately, and they're doing it on the cheap. So that way, guys like Mike Elias, the GM, what did he assume that role in 2016, 2017?
Yeah, right about, yeah.
From the Astros. He gave the Astros the blueprint on how to put those sort of teams together, and basically he just took that to Utah Street, and he's allowing for all of those kind of variables to allow him to put pieces in the bullpen, get free agents that can contribute, and it's the perfect storm for the Orioles right now.
You mentioned Utah Street, Gary. This is another element that I think a lot of people of a certain age have completely forgotten about.
No question.
Camden Yards is a yard, bro. That's a serious ballpark. And when that place gets rocking, Baltimore, excuse me, a very sort of old school baseball city that just hasn't had a lot of success recently, that's a decided advantage in my opinion, no doubt about it.
All right, so quickly, Clinton, though, what are the Rangers in for when they come to town?
Well, the Rangers, I think, are a good story because of the Bochy element. They're kind of led by the old grandfather type. They're not doing a ton of analytics necessarily. Bochy's just kind of throwing guys out and playing by feel. They've managed to get, Marcus Semien is a guy that has led that team really well when they decided to get all those people in the offseason in terms of arms, and it doesn't work. This can be a good series, but I'm with Gary on this. The O's don't know any better, and they've got home field advantage. I think they're going to win this series, and we'll get to our later picks as well. I love the O's magic right now.
All right, Clinton, you're out there in L.A., so let's come to you with this. The Dodgers have kind of gone under the radar. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the Braves have been so good.
Which is so weird to say, right? The Dodgers under the radar.
And the Phillies are just loud, so maybe that's just part of it. But
East Coast bias,
exactly,
baby.
yeah, of course. There's been a hotly contested race in the NL MVP this year. Mookie Betts, Ronald Acuña Jr., I mean, look, it probably goes to Acuña, right? But where are you leaning here?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. In terms of what the word value means, there's a couple different definitions. You got to understand that Mookie Betts is not only doing this, hitting the ball from the leadoff spot, scoring the amount of runs that he scores, but he's doing it playing multiple positions. He's played 3 positions this year. 2 on the infield, 1 in right field, because he's had to spell them ever since they lost Gavin Lux in spring training, by the by, who was going to be one of their guys that was coming up. So for me, value is very difficult to define, but if Mookie Betts wasn't playing all those positions, the Dodgers would not have won the NL West as far as I'm concerned. You can split hairs, but to me, Acuña scored more runs on the end of the year. That's why I'm giving it to him, but that's more of an MOP kind of thing if you really want to, get in between the words there.
I think value, like Clinton mentioned, maybe there's a touch of ambiguity as it relates to, all right, what are you going to make it mean? What are you going to form its definition as? I think history is pretty black and white. And Ronald Acuña is the only member of the 40-50 club. He's the only member of the 40-60 club. And he's the only member of the 40-70 club. So I think when you look at those numbers and then the total body of work of what the Braves did, and he was the catalyst from that position, I mean, he's the MVP, and I don't think it's
I'll just say
close.
quickly as well, Dave Roberts has done a heck of a job. They've had a major issue the Dodgers have in terms of their pitching staff. They're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to go with a couple of different rookies in this series. I personally think they should, but Clayton Kershaw's still there, so he's going to start game one. They have done an incredible job actually managing to get to 100 wins this season with a pitching staff they never expected to have at this point.
Right, so Acuña's opening up clubs for himself left and right.
Wait, hold on. You be the tiebreaker.
I'm going to go with Acuña. I just think it's been just been that dominating of a season. When you do the things that he's done all year long, I think you deserve that award. No shade to Mookie, though. Impressive season. We're getting you ready. Game 2 between the D-backs and the Brewers. Arizona leading the series 1-0. Zach Gallen making his postseason debut. That's coming up next. All right, time now to welcome in Terrika Foster-Brasby, our resident Detroit Tigers fan who had a disappointing season this year, given that it was Miguel Cabrera's final season playing baseball this year. But there were a lot of other teams that had disappointing seasons and teams that spent a lot more money than the Detroit Tigers did. So you're going to give us your top 5 most disappointing teams of this season, Terrika, and let's start with number 5.
Yeah, number 5, I've got the St. Louis Cardinals sitting there. I mean, we came into this season thinking that this was a team that could absolutely win the NL Central, and they finished dead last. First time doing that since 1990. Adam Wainwright deserved better.
Sure did.
Okay,
No doubt.
19 years in this league, he deserved to have a better end to that. I think we knew by the All-Star break that this was going to be a team that wasn't going to be getting it done. Pitching was mediocre at best. They were averaging 5.12 runs per game. I mean, it was bad. So let's move on from them.
Let's move on. Bottom of the Central for the Cardinals this year. On to number 4, Terrika.
Sorry, New York fans. This is where you are.
I think they agree with you, though.
This is where you are. Did they finish the season over 500? Yes. But was this a disappointing season? Absolutely yes. This team doesn't care about finishing with a winning record. They care about winning championships, and this season was below that standard. To me, the issue was simply Brian Cashman hasn't put pieces around Aaron Judge or Garrett Cole, and that might have been sustainable for a while, but the AL East has caught up to them. It's not sustainable anymore. He's got to fix it.
No question, and expectations are going to be sky high once again in New York next year. On to number 3. What do we got here, Terrika?
All right, number 3. San Diego Padres.
A lot of money there, too.
I mean, this is just really out of question. And what's crazy about this is that, this team didn't play horribly, right? They also ended the season 82-80, over 500. We just learned today that they are bringing back, can't believe I'm saying this, they're bringing back Bob Melvin and A.J. Preller. Why? Obviously, this team is a team that needs a new voice. It's a team that has a decent roster, an expensive roster at that. Didn't get quality pitching when it needed it, but all in all, absolutely probably need a change of voice.
Yeah, maybe the definition of disappointing there. Number 2, who do we got here?
Oh, no, the definition of disappointing is number 2.
Yeah, No, you got a point there.
That is absolutely the definition. When you think about the two people who are top of mind, the face of MLB, you think Shohei Ohtani and you think Mike Trout.
Yep.
Both of those players were unable to really do what needed to be done. Mike Trout, injuries, can't blame him. Shohei Ohtani, though, he had a historic season yet again and eventually cleaned out his own locker. That's how disappointing the Angels were. They have to figure it out. Revamped pitching, right? Where anybody else other than Shohei Ohtani didn't really show up to do what needed to be done. And if Mike Trout isn't healthy, then this team just doesn't go.
Yeah, and again, the Angels, I can't really bash them too much, taking a risk at the deadline and keeping Ohtani. I mean, that was their chance to kind of keep him around and win, but the win didn't come. So that's the problem with the Angels. All right, on to number 1, Terrika. Who was the most disappointing team this year?
I don't think anyone is going to disagree with me when I tell you that my number 1 team is none other than the New York Mets.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
that's all you got to say.
They've been disappointing people for years, but this one is just out of control. 101 wins in 2002, 74 this season. Pitching went from one of the best in 2022 to absolutely non-existent this season in 2023. Pete Alonso looked like a shell of himself. It was just like the most expensive roster in MLB history, which basically ended with no Verlander, no Scherzer, essentially no manager either because Buck Showalter's out of there. It makes no sense, and it's unexplainable what happened to this team this year.
All right, great stuff, Terrika. Let's go ahead and bring in Clinton Yates to get his reaction here. Any sort of qualms with this list here, Clinton, first?
No, I like your list, Terrika, but to me, the Padres are at the top of the list.
Ooh.
Let's not forget, everybody they got rid of to bring in Juan Soto.
True.
That is a big factor here. And so if he leaves because he is, a free agent, if they end up trading all of those guys basically for somebody who's not there and all you got out of it is one playoff series win basically over the Dodgers, they went from the team that did the most to the team that did the least on this list. And I cannot imagine what it's like to be a Padres fan right now because you got people out there dancing and making fools of themselves and talking trash, and you can't even find a way to get to the postseason.
Right. No question about it. And again, all these teams spend a lot of money, Clinton. They're going to keep spending a lot of money. But if you were to pick one of these five, which one do you think will have the quickest turnaround going into 2024?
It's got to be the St. Louis Cardinals. This is simply a down year from a talent standpoint. I think that with Jordan Walker, that young kid coming up, they're going to be able to turn it around to the best organization out of all those five, and that includes the New York Yankees.
All right, good point. And Terrika, I mean, let's hope that the Tigers have a better season to 2024 too, right?
We don't have enough drinks for that part of the show.
Thanks for joining us, Terrika. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's go up to Minnesota, do a little quick live look-in for you. Bottom of the 7th, 2 on. Royce Lewis just retired. And a meeting on the mound here. Clinton, this is kind of an interesting series here between these two teams in the sense that the Blue Jays' offense was not good this year. The Twins' offense struggled as well. This has kind of been a low-scoring series so far and expecting it to be. But I mean, it's just been interesting.
Yeah, and earlier in this game, the Jays loaded the bases with one out, couldn't manage to get a run to score. I mean, look, this is what it comes down to. This is why I get on base running all the time. You got to find ways to get that extra 90, and it hasn't worked out for either one of these teams. That's why you play the games, basically.
We do play the games. That's an important part of the games. Let's make some World Series picks here. I'll start real quick because we're running out of time. Out of the AL, I'm taking Houston. Again, their pitching led them in the postseason last year all the way to the World Series title. I think that's going to happen again. I think they're going to face off against the Atlanta Braves, who again have been the best team in all of baseball. Gary, agree or disagree with me?
I rock with you on the Braves pick, and thanks to Clinton's very inspiring reasoning for why Baltimore is good. And also, pat myself on the back here, why Baltimore is good. I've changed my AL pick from Houston to Baltimore.
Well, you called this 2 years ago.
That's not what it says on the sheet, Gary.
I know.
That's not what it says.
Your boy, I changed it. Braves, Orioles, but give me the Braves.
I'm sticking with Brandon Hyde and the Orioles. That season has just been too fun for me to not think it's going to keep going. Like I said, Adley, ever since he's been an Oregon State Beaver, has just been a heck of a baseball player. But I got to go with the Braves here. And you know who specifically? I need to see Matt Adams show up, all right? They won that thing with Freddie.
Oh.
They traded him for you. You're younger. You hit more homers. Let's see if you can get any more rings. And I think Brian Snitker is the most underrated manager in the big leagues.
I remember Gary saying the Orioles were going to win the World Series 2 years ago when they lost north of 110 games. So
hey, listen, man.
Nostradamus in studio with us, Gary Striewski.
I'll stand by that, too. It's all good.
All right, we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining us on Baseball Tonight Live. Clinton Yates, Gary Striewski, Terrika Foster-Brasby. I'm Sam Ravech. Go on over to ESPN to enjoy Game 2 of the D-backs and the Brew Crew and enjoy the rest of the postseason.
Thanks, Sam.